First, though, I'd like to speak with the voters over here because we do have our voter panel, and this, again, a diverse group, Republicans and Democrats here tonight. And I'd just like to take your temperature on what you've been seeing so far. Of course, these closely watched races, Pete Sessions and Colin Allred, the DA's race here in Dallas, and, of course, this U.S. Senate race with Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. What are your thoughts as you're watching these early votes come in? Is this playing out like you thought it would in the very early going? Anyone? Go ahead.
I think we've seen this before. I feel like we just need to wait. In the beginning, it's too soon to call this, and it's hopeful. Actually, we're starting to see numbers coming in, and things have already changed. So it's just we have to wait for it.
We know it's going to be crucial tonight to watch these bedroom communities, these suburban communities. A lot has been said about suburban women, in particular, who could be the ones who decide how things go, not only here in Texas but across the country. That they're the ones who could be very engaged and will decide either way how the balance of power goes. Does anyone here have thoughts on when we see places like Williamson County, for example, outside of Austin, usually a very, very conservative area. It's a suburban area. And right off the top here, we are seeing that for some reason, Beto O'Rourke may have had a resounding message with some folks there. Didn't expect to see him come out of the gates ahead there. Does anybody have a thought on that?
I think at the end of the day with Beto O'Rourke, he's approachable and he's seen as approachable. You can differ with him on some of the policies and some of the specifics. I'm a supporter and there's some things that I don't agree with, but you do get a sense that if I could just get to him and have a conversation with him, you get a sense that first, that's possible, that you can get to him and have a conversation with him. And secondly, you get a sense that he would actually listen. And even if you don't sway him to your side or the other, people want to be heard. And I think we're in a place where we hear so much divisiveness, we scream at each other. And I think Beto came out of the gate listening. He did like a listening tour. And that's what I think is resonating with the suburban voters.
Cesar, you had something to say about this?
For me, even though it's early, what I really like is that I see that there's excitement, because if there's changes or surprises in some places, that means a lot of people thought, I count. My vote matters. So this time, even though history was on one side or the other side, they actually decided to join in, which is the most important part. Because you can complain all you want and you can disagree all you want, but you have to express your opinion. And this one is really, really hopeful for me, what I've seen so far.
I think a lot of people wholeheartedly agree with that, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent. It is refreshing to see so many people turning out at the polls, whether it was early voting or on the day of, and not just complaining at the dinner table and goodness knows like on Facebook and other social media platforms, but to actually get out there, wait in that line and cast your vote and really make your voice be heard. We're going to come back to you all in just a few minutes here. Jason, are you getting more numbers in right now?
Yeah, first, Jason, let's go down to Austin and talk to Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Ross, you guys are burning that seat up down there at the Trib. Tell us what your reaction is to what you're seeing so far here, man.
Well, the numbers are much closer than expected. The polling had Cruz ahead of Beto O'Rourke all summer, all into the fall, by somewhere between 3 to 9 points, depending on which poll it was. It's neck and neck, and as you guys have been saying, in a lot of the suburban counties, it's either a very close race or O'Rourke's actually ahead. The governor's race is closer than it was supposed to be. Right now it's at 10 points. That's an incomplete return. Things could change. And on down the statewide ballot, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and some others are in unexpectedly tight races tonight.
Most recent Secretary of State update we had just a moment ago, Ted Cruz has now pulled ahead slightly of Beto O'Rourke. The question is, with El Paso County out, with Harris County out, can Cruz maintain that lead?
Well, it just depends on how it comes in. Harris County is the big kahuna, right? That's the biggest county of all, followed by Dallas. It's not as blue as Dallas is, and Cruz is hoping to pick up some votes there. El Paso County's early voting exceeded its total 2014 voting in the first 3 days of early voting. They're voting like crazy back there in my hometown, and I've got to assume that that's for the hometown kid.
And let's talk briefly about what you alluded to and what we've discussed here at this table with the other analysts I have here with me. The suburban counties, these are traditionally, you know, deep red counties: Collin County, Williamson County, Fort Bend County, Montgomery County. O'Rourke is cutting into these like I haven't seen in my 21 years in Texas.
Right. You know, the cities are blue. Dallas is a blue city. Even Fort Worth's a blue city, although it's in a red county. Houston is a blue city, and the way the Republicans offset that is with rural votes, and especially with suburban votes in the counties like you talked about: Collin, Denton, Rockwall, Montgomery down by Houston, Williamson over by Austin. It used to be Fort Bend, although Beto O'Rourke is well ahead in Fort Bend County. The demographics there have changed significantly. I think the math of Texas statewide elections has changed somewhat, and we're certainly seeing it in these early votes. Whether these hold or not remains to be seen, but I think the changes in patterns are pretty evident.
And Vinny Manchillo from Glass House Strategy is here with us as well. Vinny brought up a good point. Another path to power that Cruz has are these rural West Texas counties that are always deep red. Are there enough of those to, you know, get Cruz over the top, to get him over that narrow margin?
You know, if it's close everywhere else, yeah. You know, when you look at a map of the state after an election, it looks like a big Texas-shaped bowl of tomato soup, and that's because those rural counties are really solidly red. The problem with that is that they're not very populated, and the populated places, the cities and the suburbs, you know, are generally the offset. It's been the combination of rural counties and suburban counties that has made the Republican juggernaut for the last 2 decades, and we're seeing that tested tonight.
Ross, what are the surprises you see tonight?
Well, I think the big one is in the statewide numbers. I mean, you know, you're seeing a lot there. It looks, you know, in the early numbers like the Democrats running for the state house, whether it's the Senate or the House, particularly in Dallas County, are going to have a big night, and that could change the numbers in the Texas House. I don't think it makes it a Democratic House, but it makes it a less Republican one, and they're about to elect a speaker. That'll change the politics over there.
All right, Ross, we'll check back with you in about an hour or so. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Let's bring in Jason Wheeler here. I'm usually over at his work area, but you have an update as well here,
I decided to come visit y'all over here at the experts table this time. We've been looking at the Secretary of State's website right now. We're also pulling up some maps so that we can get a little bit more detailed into this. But, you know, it's just a slugfest that's going to keep on going all night long. Beto O'Rourke now up by 135,000 votes statewide. So, again, you're seeing that swing back to sort of that initial lead that he came out of the gates with. Cruz then made it tighter and came over the top of him, and now Beto is back on top by about 135,000. One thing that surprised me is we're getting these Tarrant County votes down now, and at this point Ted Cruz is in the lead in Tarrant County, but by about 5,000 votes. If you look historically at Tarrant County, that is usually a stronghold for Republicans. You usually see some pretty nice margins there in favor of Republicans. And again, the night is young here. This is an early vote coming in, but that is significant that we're not seeing him, and that's your territory, Bud, that we're not seeing a jump out.
Bellwether County, and Cruz is just barely ahead. John Cornyn won it by 60 points last time. You know, Cruz needed to pile up numbers, and Tarrant, he's not doing it.
And here's a question for everybody here at this table and everybody in the studio. What percentage does Cruz need in Harris County, which we are waiting on, to survive? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Does he need half plus or what?
Well, yeah, if Cruz doesn't win Harris County, he's in real trouble. And I mean, he really needs to do better than win it. He needs to get 52, 53% there.
You know, when he took on Sadler back in 2012, he pulled Harris County, which is his hometown, by about 2%. So it was tight even back then. It will be very curious tonight to see what these two do. It's going to come down to Harris County tonight, don't you guys think?
Well, if it does, Cruz has got trouble, because I believe that Beto will win Harris County.
You think so?
I've done a lot of work in Harris County. I believe Beto will win it.
What do you think, guys?
There's an old adage, and the bank robber says, "Why do you rob banks?" And he said, "That's where the money is." And Harris County is where the votes are. If Ted cannot get those votes in Harris County, where's he going to get them? They're not in Tyler. They're not in Abilene. They're not in Amarillo. They're in Harris County, and Dallas, and Travis, and all the big major centers. If he cannot get 52, 53, 54%, Katie barred the door. Here we are.
We could be looking at the last 10, 15, 20 minutes here of thinking of a Senator Ted Cruz. So these Harris County results will be in when the polls close after 8 o'clock. We'll have the early if they're decisively Democratic. I don't know how that can change.
We could be looking at the last 10 or 15, 20 minutes or so of Cruz as a senator. That's shocking considering his meteoric rise in 2012, the first Tea Partier ever elected to national office, essentially. And then he runs, and he's the last man standing against President Trump.
Consider what it means in 2020. I mean, the Electoral College is predicated upon having 2 senators from Texas who are strongly conservative, and a governor and a lieutenant governor and an AG, and we're seeing the dismantling of that. Why? I would say, I posit for 2 reasons. Obviously, the Beto effect. But 2, the man in Washington has done a number on people like me who are centrist, conservative Republicans who care about Chamber of Commerce issues, and the person in the White House says consistently, we don't agree with that. We want to go with divisiveness and anger. And you see the result. This is what happens when you go to the extreme right, when you go for a bathroom bill, when you advance causes like the anti-vaccination movement. Those kinds of things are extreme, and they're not accepted by Texans, and we're seeing that tonight. We have sown, we are reaping what we have sown in Texas.
Well, in addition to that,
Vinny, do you want to chime in on that real quick?
I do, because I think one of the things we've always said in Republican primaries is, well, that candidate lost because they weren't conservative enough. So I think we will not hear that phrase anymore, because being super far right is not selling tonight.
So does tonight's result in this state pull the Republican Party a little bit back towards the center?
Well, from your lips to God's ears, I hope so.
Has to.
Let's talk about this, though. This is always the election, the midterm of the first term that goes against the president. Won't some of this drift back the Republicans away in the next cycle, in the presidential election cycle in 2020? Well, I mean, do you really think Texas won't drift back toward the red?
No, unquestionably, we're going to remain a conservative center-right state.
Yeah.
We will make sure that we do the things that we care about as Republicans and conservatives. But I think what this does mean is the days of the far right are numbered in Texas.
I want to pick this conversation up in just a moment here, guys. You know, about a half hour ago, we paused this live stream to do a cut-in here on television. We're going to do the same thing. Colby, watch her back there. Going to do the same thing again right now. John and Marie are about to cut in here.